Hello, hello, hello. Tyler James is here, and I'm excited to be spending some time with you and to have a special guest today. My guest today is an award-winning comic book colorist and indie comic creator. And for the last 15 years or so, he's worked for top flight talent and publishers, including Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Aspen, Dynamite. And you've probably seen his work in TV, film, and video games that you have kicking around the house or that you love. He also is a big staple in the indie comics scene. He publishes his creator-owned work under the imprint Cosmic Root Studios. And he's been serializing the Savage Sasquanaut series on Kickstarter with issues 1 through 5 live and on the platform right now. So welcome to Comics Launch, Wes Hartman. How's it going, Wes?
It's good, man. Thanks a lot. Waiting for my coffee delivery today. I haven't had my coffee today.
Are the interns not not working properly?
No, we only had a little bit left. I let the wife have it on her way to work, and so now it's just waiting for that last minute delivery, and it's late.
Okay. Well, I'll do the heavy lifting here, Wes, until you've been fully caffeinated. But I'm excited to talk to you. You are in the midst of Kickstarter campaign number 5, and
Yep.
you've really done what is my top recommendation for creators that are trying to get the ball rolling on Kickstarter. That's picking a series that you're wildly passionate about it and serializing it on the Kickstarter platform across a series of launches. And so I'm curious, like as a 15 plus year veteran in comics, what was it that finally got you into the Kickstarter game in the first place, and how have things evolved since that first launch for you?
Well, to keep things nice and short, because that could be a very long story.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last round of indie stuff, I had helped build a small print publisher, a small press publisher through Diamond, and we were operating for about 2 or 3 years. And with the help of Diamond plus a little bit of other outside help, it collapsed pretty quick. And then it was like, well, I was going to put Sasquanaut out through that, and then the whole thing just really fell apart. It's like, well, what next? And well, I mean, I've got all this art, and Kickstarter was picking up more and more. I was familiar with it. We did 2 launches for a collected edition with that company. The first one unsuccessful. The second attempt barely made it, but it made it. And I was like, all right, well, let me see what I can do here, because I just kept seeing numbers, and I had friends, and everybody's jumping on. It's like, man, there's something here. And
Yeah.
of course, I was buying Kickstarter as well. So
yeah, it's amazing how much or how important it is just to get that first bit of traction.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, everybody that's been around the world of comics for any period of time, I'm sure, has their ups and downs and their highs and lows. And clearly, feeling like you're getting close and getting momentum, and the book's going to come out through Diamond, only to have the realities of the very cutthroat comic industry, direct market comic industry, and where you're selling cheapest possible products at the lowest possible margins. It's hard to keep anything afloat. Just relying on that,
especially when Diamond didn't pay you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, you were supposed to send that there. It's like, well, I don't know that person. You're my guy. I thought you were sending it because you said to send it to you.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Left hand, right hand there, and it bit us pretty hard.
Yeah. Well, so for those creators that are unfamiliar with the world of the Savage Sasquanaut, what's the high? I mean, this is a high concept of high concepts, but what's this book about, and why was this a story that you not only had to tell, but you've stuck with over 5 launches and are really building a following for?
The short version is it's about Bigfoot in space, and it stems from one random day where I was looking for new music online. Like, man, I just want to find something I haven't heard before, and I found a stoner rock band that had a 4 or 5 track EP called Sasquanaut, and there was a monkey in a spacesuit on the cover. I'm like, well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
What is that? And one, I like the music, and then I was like, that name just stuck with me, and I was like, that has to exist. Like Bigfoot in space, that has to exist. And I spent months just looking around trying to see some story about Bigfoot in space, where it was a comic or a short story or some foreign TV show nobody'd seen. Like it had to exist. And after a couple months, it's like, man, I can't believe this doesn't exist. What? It's such a great name, Sasquanaut, Sasquatch, Sasquanaut, astronaut. What? Who wouldn't want that? I mean, that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles level amazing. And like, oh, I make comics. I should make it. Nobody else has done it yet. The fact that it took me that long to come to that realization, I'm not exactly proud of, because, like I said, it took a while. And then I just started typing at my desk one day after I'd finished up some coloring. It's like, oh, stream of consciousness. Wrote about 5-6 paragraphs of this crazy idea of NASA capturing Bigfoot and strapping them to a rocket and tossing them up in space just so they could try and beat the Russians in the 1960s. And I started sharing it with the guys in the office, like, man, are you going to make that? Let's make that. Let's make that. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to make that. And then we had the business meeting. It's like, oh, did you see Wes's thing? It's like, yeah, it's going on the schedule. It's like, wait, I don't even have a story. Like, we can't put it in Diamond yet. I don't have a story. Who's going to draw it? It's like, we'll figure it out later. It's like, I don't know, man. I like this idea too much to rush into it. Let me sit on it a while. And unfortunately, a while became many years.
Yeah.
Because getting a artist, that was a challenge, because I went through multiple artists trying to find the right guy and the person that was going to stick with it. And self-funded. I mean, I raised money doing my freelance work and paid the artist to draw it as I wrote it. So, I mean, I had the first 6 issues done before I ever even launched the first issue on Kickstarter.
Yeah. And that's definitely a commitment and an investment that,
thousands of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how did, I'm curious, because there's not a ton of, or I haven't talked to a ton of creators that primarily are known for coloring and being a color artist, that then transition into, doing, and being the driving force behind their Kickstarter campaigns. How did you get into coloring comics in the first place?
Well, like everybody, I used to draw comics on my own and with friends, and just do my hand at writing. And when I graduated high school, my brother gave me a copy of a Photoshop 5.5, and so I just started playing. And when I was going to the local community college, they had actually a really good graphic arts program, and so I started taking graphics arts classes and just kept playing in Photoshop on my own. And when I actually took the Photoshop class, just for my own screwing around, teaching myself how to color, because I enjoyed it. It was a great hobby, good stress relief for me. And when I took my actual Photoshop class, I was showing the teacher how to do things. It's like, man, I didn't know I could graduate a college level course with 114 grade point average. Like, I didn't think that was possible, but there it was. Like, there's something to this Photoshop stuff.
Can you apply some of those points to some of your other classes? That's
especially math and economics.
Yeah.
And so then when I started working with Anarch Press, because they're based locally, and a couple of the guys there were running a color studio, Guru Effects, who was doing Marvel Mangaverse and X-Men and all kinds of titles with Marvel. And they got hit with the deadlines, and like, hey, you gotta do the solicitation covers this month. We're too busy trying to get Venom out the door. And so I started doing the covers, coloring the covers for I think it was a month of October for Diamond solicitations. Like, hey, these don't look bad. You want to color Venom? was like, yeah, let's color Venom.
Of course I want to color Venom.
So then, and that was it, man. Like I stuck with them and was rocking with them for many years and got to do all kinds of stuff from the smallest Marvel titles to one of the great big events, the Shadowland event we were doing with Daredevil getting all like demon possessed or something. So it's like, it was cool. But I mean, in that whole time I was doing that, I was still working at Art Press, would do the day-to-day. I put out my own creator-owned comic. I was editing lots of others and just working with everybody and learned so much because we had Fred Perry there in the studio. And if you're not familiar with Fred Perry, you really should be. He's coming up on his 300th issue of Gold Digger. He writes, draws, pencils, inks, colors, letters every single month, and usually he has a second or third book that he does in addition to that. So I mean, the dude puts out more comic work and more stories than probably anybody in comics since Jack Kirby.
Wow.
And he drew my first creator-owned comic and basically became, let me tell you how it's done, son. This is what you need to do. Like, why are you doing this? Oh, you think it's cool? Come up with a better reason. So he taught me so much thing and reshaped my entire outlook to storytelling and comics. And it's like, wow, just, it's like light from heaven shining down on me. And of course, Fred, because he's the one who taught me, is like, dude, this is the best thing ever. Crazy hard, but so awesome.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, as the Savage Sasquanaut has evolved from, a cheeky high concept of just like, that would be cool. Yeah. How have you been able to sort of add some of themes or resonance or personal stuff that makes this a story that really only Wes Hartman could tell at this point?
Well, I've noticed a recurring theme in most of the stories I end up telling, and that's trying to find your place in the world, or in Sasquanaut's place in the universe. I think it's something anybody and everybody can relate to, because we've all been there trying to figure out what it all means, where we are, and that's prevalent through Sasquanaut. Once he goes off in space and his goal is, man, I got to get back to my woods. I want to go back home. This isn't me, whatever. But being out in space and having all these adventures, he realizes it changes him. He's like, no, I'm kind of having a lot of fun out here. Maybe I am supposed to be, arm wrestling aliens and stealing spaceships and,
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I always stress on the podcast is that every time you launch, there's an opportunity to learn and to try some new things and to test out some new strategies. I'm curious for this latest launch, and the nice thing about serializing your launches is that you can keep 80 to 95% of everything that you've done before that works.
Oh yeah.
In place, and then when you are testing new stuff, you're building upon a proven recipe, and you're just trying to tweak it a little bit. So I'm curious, is there anything new you're trying or excited about for this latest launch? And what have you found? Because I know that this one has gotten off to a faster start than expected for sort of your previous launches.
This one, I'm not reinventing the wheel too much. Really sticking with the same strategies. I built out the page kind of to our comics launch template format that was encouraged, and I had some folks look over it, and really the only negative feedback, which is something that's kind of sitting at the back of my mind, was that it sure takes a whole long time to get down to the rewards. And that's really what people want. Because I got a ton of graphics. I've got a ton of merchandise left over from the previous campaigns. And so I opted to try and rejigger that a little bit. So not just in page layout, I tried to move things up a little more and down. I don't know if that's proving to be a big help or not. Like that's not something I can really quantify. But I'll say this one's a little more challenging just because I'm coming towards the close of the first volume. The first volume, 6 issues,
Right.
and then I'll have a few other projects take the place of Sasquanaut for probably about 2 years or so before it returns. And I'm very wary about inventory right now. So the challenge is creating great new material, but I'm also not going to have too much stock hanging around for a couple years. So hasn't really been an issue with the last several campaigns, because anything I don't sell is like, cool, I can roll it right into the next one. And it's been fantastic. It's super helpful because I get a new round of backers each time. So, or even previous backers, like, well, I only had enough to get this item, but I really want the pin too. Well, hey, guess what? You can get the pin. And so that's been great going through. But now that I'm kind of getting towards the end here, it's really making me plan a lot and really rethink what I'm doing, because as you know, usually when you start going out to get custom stuff done, it's better to buy a higher amount, 100, 200 of something, than it is to buy like 50. You're going to end up paying probably about the same price. So it's a real challenge this time, because
I mean, and that making your order quantities and making your purchases things, it's one of those things where, like, they never told you how much math you were going to be required to do when you jump into the world of comics.
I've gotten really good at fractions.
Yeah. Well, with so much, so much of the art is puzzles and math and just figuring out the layouts and pages. Yeah, but I'm sort of going through the same thing with the Series for Cthulhu launch that we're rocking right now. It's doing amazing. It's blowing out our it's on track to be the most funded thing that we've done. That's but awesome. It's also going to be the most expensive thing that we've created, and part of the reason why it's doing so well is that we have a lot of products that people can purchase, and it's just getting, like, adding, like, it's a double-edged sword. Like, everything we add to the project creates an instant, immediate surge of funding, but it also it adds a lot of cost, and especially when a lot of the products that we do, like we're talking custom plush toys and things, I can't order 17 and have that. Like, there's a minimum of 500 or 600 or 800 in some cases, and so it's like, okay, well, that product actually for this campaign, it's going to take a loss. And it can be tough, especially in the comics world, where you might not have a lot of opportunities right away to resell it, as you said, with the next Kickstarter that's right down the line. And so getting those numbers right can mean the difference between making a decent chunk of change on your campaign, or ending up in the red and hoping to get bailed out on the next one, right?
Yeah. Well, and the lack of cons too, because I also, whenever I was planning, I was like, all right, I'm gonna have this much allotted to do Kickstarters, this much for conventions, and then of course the pandemic hit, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's all going to Kickstarters if I can get it to go.
And then as you say, that as you're getting towards the end of the series, it's like are like, you have the decision to make: do I want to, for the rest of my life, keep Sasquanaut numbers 3, 4, and 5 in print, or am I hoping to phase those out, let those be for the collectors, and we're really pushing a volume 1 trade version of it, and that's the preferred means of the way that I want people to interact with this going forward. So these are decisions, crowdfunding decisions that we have to make.
Yep. And I'll say this campaign, with the way it's going, and just it's going really well. I'm very happy with it, but it's also allowed me to rethink my future plans for my follow-up projects, because initially I was like, okay, I'm going to do these 6 issues, the eventual collected edition, and from there, whenever I do new projects, I'll skew more into graphic novels as opposed to serializing. But crunching numbers and seeing the return backers and the new backers and the amount of time it's taken the growth, and just like, hey, I've still got stuff here, stored in my closet over here.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and working with my artist friends, it's just like, if we were going to do it this way and knock out 60-page graphic novel or whatever, but if we just chop that back up and release it as series, it would give us more of a chance to grow that base. And so, I mean, I've been building to one thing, and in this campaign, I'm like, no, we're not there yet. We're not doing that. Don't worry about that. Yeah. So it's kind of re-laid out my plans for the next several years.
Yeah.
Which is good, I think.
The one thing that's been a little bit eye-opening for me, and it wasn't, it's a metric that you'd think that I would have been, really locked into, but I haven't paid as much attention to it, and now I am using that backer kit launch tool, is just what percentage of backers are new versus returning. And, for the latest launch that we're doing, there's a tremendous amount of returning backers, right? We're getting a great job of returning backers, but after a couple of days, my new backers have now eclipsed my returning backers in terms of count, and so the more you launch, yes, ideally you're bringing back existing backers, but you also pick up new people every single time, and so that's where, like, taking long periods between launches and limiting the launches can actually, especially for a new property, something that you're trying to establish, it can be, it can slow the growth. And it's a little bit crazy, that for like the Seas for Kalula, like this is our, I think, 9th Kickstarter launch for that brand. I've run Facebook ads for that brand every single day since like 2014. They're just on. And then we go big during these Kickstarter campaigns and things like that. And yet every campaign, dozens, if not hundreds of people, hey, discovering you guys for the first time. Hey, this book sounds cool. Hey, where do I start? And it reinforces that there's, like, as much as we think we are doing everything that we can to promote and to get quote unquote get the word out, there's so many more people out there that might be into our stuff if they just knew about it. So I'm curious, promotion wise, what are you doing this time around, and what's worked in the past to get the returning backers back and maybe get in front of some new folks as well? I'm running a Facebook ad right now, and this one I'm running it differently. Like they're doing the get more web buys optimization, and it's been running about a week, and it's getting a lot of eyes on it, and I'm getting multiple clicks, but unfortunately it hasn't resulted in any purchases yet. I'm hoping that'll change, or if it doesn't change within the next few days, I might pause it and restructure it and re-examine what to do with it. Previously they worked okay. So maybe the optimization just isn't quite right. Getting return backers, really, really strong percentage right now. Since you mentioned the backer kit launch, I went and looked at it, and it broke it all down for free. I haven't convinced my wife to let me spend the money on it yet, but that was also a really good eye-opening experience, because it's like, hey, here's all the numbers and how many backers you have, who's come back, so on and so forth. So, it's a great tool. Like, even if you're not going to use it or aren't sure if you're going to use it, like, I'm looking at mine right now, and like I've got a 10% backer return rate. Which 10% doesn't sound great, but that's 493 pledges with a big audience or with a big backer pool. But the thing that really stands out to me is 4,712 members that haven't backed yet.
Yeah.
that are still out there, that are still like haven't been pulled in. And the thing is, like, every time I send a message, it boosts up a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know that there are some people in that 4,700 or in that pool that are still just haven't said yes yet.
Yeah.
And so to be able to see that and to run calculations, whatever that number is, even if that's 300, right?
Yeah.
That's 300 people that are the warmest people on planet Earth potentially for your stuff.
And
So
that's funny. That's basically the number I've got right now of previous backers who haven't pledged yet on this campaign is right about.
Yeah.
So the newsletter has been helpful since I did those numbers on Friday or Saturday. Shot out a couple more newsletters, and each time I've done it, I've gotten a handful of people come in. So
nice.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's just really good to see that info and have it right there in front of me. It's like, oh, it's one of you get kind of impressions like, oh, I know this name. Like, there's a lot of names I recognize. Like, oh, I don't know this name. And whenever you're seeing whoever's backing, but you can't remember them all because there are so many, and I'm not even at your 4,000 plus numbers. I'm at a couple hundred, so it's still eye opening. It's just like, man, what a great tool. I like it.
Yeah, it's fun to geek out at just for the Kickstarter data.
Yeah,
of course,
well, and it's like, oh, this is mine. This is me. This isn't anybody else. Like, this pertains to me and what people like about what I do.
Yeah,
and that's just exciting to me.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the other thing that we're doing with this launch, which I know launches need to be at a certain level to be able to do it, but it's like we're working with backer kit marketing, and it's very easy to be skeptical of, like, all of the companies out there that are like, hey, we have access to these backers and this, that, and the other nonsense. But with the big names in crowdfunding that have been in this game for a while, are not flashing the pan, are not spamming people, are not doing things, like, backer kit's one of those trusted things. And it turns out, they actually do have a tremendous amount of data on a tremendous amount of user base, and know people who are the back Kickstarter campaigns. That's what they do. They eat, sleep, and so with our latest launch, like, I'm just surprised that, like, hey, they're running some ads to high rollers basically, and we're getting, like, like, my wife, I'm not sure how into comics or the other stuff that your wife is, but my wife doesn't understand this world, and like, she has no idea why anyone would spend what they spend on any of our Kickstarters. But different strokes for different folks. And I'm glad that those people are out there that are willing to come in and back at a high level, because it can make a really big difference.
Oh yeah, and there's a few guys that have done that on each of my campaigns, and it's been really interesting because I'm able to talk to these guys, because I'll message everybody that backs, and most people don't ever reply, but a lot of those guys that even come in at the higher levels, those are guys that most often reply. Those are guys you end up talking to.
Yeah.
And while I've never met any of these people in person, like, I consider multiple, like, man, this guy's my friend. Like, he's not even just a fan, he's my friend, which I think that's awesome. That wasn't something I ever expected when I started this. It was still very much like, yeah, put it up there, give me your money, I'll give you your books, we're cool, it's a store. And it's like, it's become so much more than that, and that's been the coolest part about it. And that's when I, like, talk to my wife about this stuff, who allows me to just go on and on about any of this. And sometimes she asks questions, and sometimes she just lets me roll. And she'll just kind of glaze over, like, oh, and that's okay. But she'll let me do that. But I can just tell her, like, oh, Lee did that and Matt did this and so on, and she'll even know who I'm talking about, because I'll tell her, like, oh, this is that guy that did this. She's like, oh, really? That's awesome. So Yeah, I mean, even my wife knows these guys without knowing them, and that's pretty cool to me.
It definitely
It's
is.
a good way to replace cons in a way for the time being.
Absolutely. That direct connection with fans and the ability to sort of, connect with some at a high level. And there is something intimate about whether it be a commission or even just signed stuff or including somebody's name or likeness in a book. Like,
Mhm.
it's cool. As the as old school comic fans, I'm sure growing up, like, we thought like the epitome or the highest possible way to connect with your creators would be maybe getting a letter in the book or,
Yeah.
or a piece of fan art that you did in the book someday. That was like the pinnacle of it. But a direct conversation, come on, no
I
way.
geeked out when my uncle Scott, who's about the only person in my family who likes comics. I don't know how or why, but he brought me a copy of Shadowhawk, I think issue 17 or 18, just off the top of my head. I couldn't quite remember. But yeah, apparently he knew Jim Valentino at some point, and so Jim Valentino had drawn on one of the pages Cup Books, which was my uncle's last name. So I was like, hey, my uncle's got a bookstore in Shadowhawk. That's pretty rad, you know. It wasn't even me, and I was geeking out for him. I'm like, look, this is my uncle. Showing my friends when they come over. I'm like, all right,
Absolutely.
cool. It's a building and a comic book. Like, no, it's awesome.
It's his building. It's real. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, as someone that has your own creator stuff, you have your the coloring gigs. You got a 2-year-old at home, a husband. What tips do you have for writers and artists, people that want to crowdfund on Kickstarter to just to get things done, to be able to just manage it and be able to do this?
It's a learning process. One thing I'm currently going through Anthony Johnston's The Disorganized Writer, his book, and he's kind of laying out his system of how he goes about writing scripts, comics, video games.
He's a big Scrivener guy, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But he's not even getting into Scrivener. He's just like, hey, this is your mindset. And he's just describing my morning or afternoon whenever I sit down to write. I'm like, dude, that's me. Like, to a T. That's not good. I mean, well, at least it's not just me, but his advice and stuff he's going through. I'm still going through it. Some things I can do, some things I can't, just practical because, got a 2-year-old running around, but I've readjusted my schedule. I'm actually on the second readjustment because the first time didn't work. Because prioritizing writing time, and he always encouraged to do it first thing in the morning. No social media. Don't look at your phone. Like, get out of bed, maybe make some coffee, and just go write for an allotted time. And well, I put that at the end of the day for a while. I was like, okay, wife will go down to bed 10:30 before she goes to work. So cool. I'll take 10:30 and work till midnight and do that, and maintained a couple days, but I couldn't do it regular because getting up at 5, 6 in the morning and chasing a kid all day, you get pretty tired, plus trying to do work. So
yeah,
I've shifted again now, and this week just this week I've started getting up at 5, and so I'll roll out of bed, don't touch the phone, don't do anything, maybe make some coffee, and I just come to my computer and I'm bashing out, trying to finish a script that I've been working on for a while, and honestly, it's just in the first couple days of this week, I'll probably finish the script by the end of this week if everything keeps progressing. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So just minor shifts. It's finding what works for you. Those bits of quiet time. My daughter typically wakes up between 7:30, and of course, these last 2 days when I'm trying this new schedule, she wakes up at 5:45 and 6.
yeah.
So even though that a lot of times shorter than it should be, is still proven to be very successful, just because, like, oh, I'm not answering this post on social media. I'm not going and seeing who posted what on Kickstarter overnight, messaging whoever backed. Like, I just put all that off until after my daughter wakes up and I feed her breakfast. So
Yeah.
that's been very effective just for the few days I've been doing it.
Yeah, and there's a real, like, I think there's a, when you do that thing that lights you up, that you want to get done, that and you're able to give that your full focus to it, as opposed to at the very end of the day, that has a spillover effect to the rest of the day, so that, like, no matter what happens later on in the day, you like, hey, I hit my writing quota for the day. I got my creativity out. I got it going. And a lot of times I'll find, like, the breakthroughs, the ahas, sometimes they happen as long as I'm sort of in a flow and in a routine. They'll happen throughout the day, so that when you sit down the next day, you're ready to rock and roll again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it sounds really simple and like, oh yeah, that's obvious, but that's usually the best advice, is just like, oh yeah, it's so simple, it can't not work. But that was the whole thing, was just not allowing your mind to be filled up with everything that happens during the day. Because even when I was doing the evening writing at the end of the day, it was going okay, but I mean, I'd bash out, if I was lucky, 2 pages.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I knocked out 5 or 6 this morning in the hour and 15 minutes I was able to do it. So it's a bit better, right. I'm sure there's going to be peaks and valleys, but it's
over here. We're, looking forward. We pulled my boy from daycare last March, and so he's been home, and we've been splitting that up. But now it's like, okay, well, in the fall, it looks like he's gonna start preschool, and that's going to totally change our schedules again. And but every time there is a change like that, it's an opportunity to reinstill some of those good habits. There's a saying I love, like, what's easy to do is also easy not to do. So things like don't check your phone first thing. Easy to do, also easy not to do.
Yeah,
but the cumulative effect of that over a longer period of time can be tremendous, right?
Well, and it actually really proved true today, because when I finally did check my phone, I had a reply on a Facebook thread, specifically even about Kickstarter. Apparently one gentleman had a pretty negative experience, was unsuccessful, and it's just like, well, what's the point? And it's just like Kickstarter's not any good. And I was like, nah, Kickstarter's pretty rad. But it's like, well, why should I pick Kickstarter over having a store? And it's like, well, you don't pick one over the other. It all builds together. And it's like, and even if you only have a store, you still need to have the audience, which was what everybody in the thread was trying to talk to him about. And it's like, it all works together. And it was one of those things where I felt, when he questioned me, I wanted to give him a good answer. I didn't want to just be like, just do it all and leave it at that. Like, I felt it really warranted, like, this is an explanation, this is how it works. And I told him, none of this is easy. I'm telling you this as somebody who's doing it, but to varying levels of success. I mean, I'm not a marketing guy. I wish I was. Right. It's a big trial and error, trying this, see if it works. If it doesn't work, okay, I'll try something else. But it doesn't come naturally to me. I started off as a comic book colorist. It was very much, and even the guys I was working with, it's just like, we'll let our work speak for ourselves. We don't have to go be personalities. And when I started, I'm 39 now. I was 20 when I started. And it's comics has changed a couple times, even in the time I've been in comics. Like the world is completely different. And so, I mean, social media barely existed. It's MySpace more than anything, and nobody was using for comics. There weren't personalities like there are now, comic book pundits, if you will. That stuff just didn't exist. You didn't have to go out and do this, and it was very much like, if your work's good, people will see it, and that's where it's at. And now, with social media, for better and worse, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. If you only sit there and just want the work to speak for yourself, you're very easily going to get lost in the shuffle, unless it's just can't be ignored, and that's very rare, because there's amazing talent out there, and this amazing talent's already going to be better at social media than probably I am. So it's work, and you can't not do it at this point.
Right. I mean, with all things, like having a great product is going to be, easier to get behind in the market. But at the same time, I can see plenty of great books out there that, hey, awesome book. You're a lousy salesperson because you're not in front of anybody's face, or you're just not out there. So yeah, I mean, and the cool thing is these are all things that you can learn. And I know you've been working on building your email list over the past couple of years, and finding routines and that work for you, but also doing things in a way that's authentic to you, and that you can actually build real relationships from these strangers that discover you on Kickstarter, which is really an awesome thing about the platform. I don't think we've ever done the Comics Launch speed round with you. So if you're game, I'll hit you with a couple speed round questions.
Okay.
All right. Just finish this sentence. Kickstarter is blank.
Awesome. I know it's kind of generic, but
hey, it's true, especially when when you're in a launch month, man.
Yeah.
If the powers that be at Kickstarter were listening, what would you change about the platform if you could change just one thing?
I would put images on the actual rewards, and even in the add-ons. I think that would be much more useful to have there, as opposed to in the page itself.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think, it seems like something that they're considering doing. I've seen that show up in a couple of Kickstarter surveys. So we'll see if that comes
I figure
around.
it'll get there. I mean, that's about the only cool feature on Indiegogo now. There's like 3 or 4 things I like on Indiegogo, and that's one of them.
That's one of them. Yeah.
Bring that over here.
What would you say your secret weapon is? A tool, a resource, an app that you couldn't make comics or do what you do without?
Photoshop. I live and breathe in Photoshop.
Yeah, as a colorist, I'm sure. Fulfillment is an area that often trips up Kickstarter creators. Do you have a fulfillment tip for listeners?
Be very mindful what you end up offering merchandise-wise, and make sure you can pack it all together and not have some outlier that requires a secondary or second shipment. Like, hey, if you're packing comics, great. Don't do a 24 by 36 poster that people want rolled, and you were planning on folding it, and then all of a sudden you've got to buy poster tubes and ship that separately, and that'll eat your costs up real quick.
Absolutely. And can you recommend one comic or book other than Savage Sasquanaut, of course, that more people need to check out?
Oh man, that's a really good question, because there's a lot of great stuff. I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, all your friends are going to yell at you if you don't pick theirs.
Right? Oh,
just pick one. The first one that comes to your campaign.
Oh man, I don't even know where to go. It's like this should be the easiest question in the world, and I'm stumped.
Well, I see Absolute Planetary in the back there on your shelf,
yeah,
and I just actually just checked out the Planetary Omnibus. So I'll pull one from your shelf for you, Wes.
Actually, let me say Bone, Jeff Smith's Bone.
Okay.
I think that's a perfect introductory comic. If you're trying to turn somebody on the comics, Jeff Smith's Bone is freaking awesome. It's epic, and you can show people that it's not all just tights and capes and superheroes.
Absolutely.
I got my wife to read Bone, and she loved it. So.
Yeah, I think that's more. There's a lot of people's first comic experience, or a lot of young readers as well. Well, awesome, man. This has been fun having this conversation with you, and just checking in and seeing the growth of Savage Sasquanaut. I know you got 17 days as we're recording this left to go on the campaign, and I'm sure would love any backer support that want to jump in there and get some cosmic action.
Yes, please.
Maybe one final piece of advice, maybe for young aspiring color artists out there that are maybe trying to get better or get a gig, what advice do you have for the young and hungry color artists out there?
Learn what illegal colors are. I see a lot of amazing art on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and I can see instantly that it will never print like they envision it to. It looks great on a screen, but the colors are illegal, and that means they won't print. So what you get is going to be a very muted, muddy, not great representation. So if you learn that early on, it'll save you a little bit of frustration in the long run. Is illegal colors.
Awesome. And 2020, 2021, early parts have been a little rough, obviously. But what has you most excited going into the spring and the summer of this year?
Man, I'm excited that we're coming towards the conclusion of this volume of Sasquanaut, because it has been a very, very, very long time coming. It's been years in the making. So I'm excited that I'm getting towards the end of this first volume. I've got multiple other projects that I'm developing right now. Like I'm finishing a script hopefully this week for a new graphic novel multi-issue thing. I've got a couple other ideas that I'm really excited about as well. And yeah, I'm just really, really happy to be creating. I mean, I'm really putting a lot of effort into creating more, because coloring has always been what pays the bills. So that always took priority. And right now I'm more of a part-time colorist because I'm a full-time dad. And so it kind of allows me a little more flexibility to create more. So that's put me in a better mental headspace than I've probably been in 20 years. Even though the world's burning down around us, I'm actually doing really, really well.
Yeah, it is amazing how, the crazy thing is I can already see it, is there will be some things, oddly enough, that people will look back on and lament, like maybe even if it's just like the guilt-free binging of a show that they've been waiting. Well, can't go outside, can't do this. Let me watch all of X, Y, or Z. Awesome. And one little bonus question I just saw in the comments that popped up from David that we can both weigh in on. He asked, what would you say is a good amount of time between each campaign? I'm curious, like, now that you're 5 campaigns in, and I know you've had some timing issues with this one, and it's taken longer than you wanted. But if everything was rocking and rolling and on track, what would be ideal for you between your average time between each campaign?
I would say quarterly is my ideal. I would like to go a campaign about 4 times a year. 3 times, but I'm only hitting 2 a year right now. But I'm hoping to ramp that up to even 3 or 4 times a year. I think that would provide the most growth in keeping me and my products in front of people's eyes, which I think would only help expand the growth.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I have yet to see an example of a creator that a successful creator that's putting out good product that is launching too much for their fan base and getting that feedback. Hey man, slow down your Kickstarters. If it was every 6 months instead of every 3 months or whatever, I'd like it better. That's just not how our fan base works. Right.
Yeah. Well, in comics, I mean, we're used to the monthly grind. So, I mean, if you could do it monthly, I don't even know if that's physically possible in Kickstarter right now. But I mean, if you could do it, why not? But
usually the answer is, as short an amount of time that you can do and still deliver on your promises to your backers.
And that was what I think was really good between issues 3 and 4, because I was able to follow up 4 right after I fulfilled 3. So, I mean, I fulfilled 3 in July and August, and 4 launched right there in September. And 4 was the biggest campaign to date up until this one. So, I mean, that one outperformed all expectations. And this one, I was just kind of like, well, we'll see what happens. And so far, backer count is going up, and so good mojo. I just got to keep it up.
That's right. Well, the book is Savage Sasquanaut. It is on Kickstarter right now. So you can connect with Wes and follow up with anything that we talked about here with him. Message him through Kickstarter. One of the great things about that platform. But besides Kickstarter and this latest launch, where should people be checking you out, Wes?
I've got a Patreon account, Wesflow, WESFLO. I post most days. And all kinds of info, break down my thought process of what I'm doing on coloring, or whether or not I'm approaching story, or even just scheduling issues. Just pretty much kind of the approach to creating comics I take. I'm on Twitter, but I'm there, but I'm not particularly active. Instagram, I'm on. Facebook, I've got multiple Facebook pages. That's what I use the most. So if you really want to hit me, probably hit me Facebook or even Patreon, because I'm on there regularly as well.
Absolutely. And you say you're sort of working part-time colorist right now, but if people are looking for a quality professional color artist and they want to hit you up for cover commissions or other work,
Yeah.
are you open?
Yeah, covers are a bit easier right now. I've got some story stuff I'm already doing. I'm booked up for probably the next couple months on story stuff, but covers I can usually squeeze in here and there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Wes. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and knowledge and awesome work with the Comics Launch listeners. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and go check out Savage Sasquanaut. It's Bigfoot in space, guys. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we can't wait to see what you all launch next. Take care.